Greetings, Darklings, from across the interwebs. It is once again I, the Duchess, Precious Ken, committing an immortal sin today of rocking my own t-shirt on my own interview. What an asshole. And along with that theme of self-promotion, I do want to start out today, before we get into our amazing guest, giving a shout out to a new project that just came out. When I grew up, in my teen years, we didn't so much have the internet to, have review pages and blogs and, online DJs to find music. I would go on Friday when I save up my money from caddying or whatnot and go up to the record store and find out what the latest Cleopatra Records sampler was, where they would have goth bands or post-punk bands from all over, and they would be on this sampler, and that's how I would find new music. And it was the kind of my treat for myself when I would get to go up there, ride my bike up and what have you, to find new music. And so bucket list thing for me this past Friday, that Cleopatra, along with Procession Magazine, put out The Unquiet Grave, the final chapter. They've had a series of these Cleo comps, and this one came out, and it's absolutely amazing. I've been digging through it all weekend. A lot of Sounds and Shadows family on it, Bedless Bones, A Cloud of Ravens, Jason Priest, Adoration Destroyed, A Covenant of Thorns, lots of our dear friends Chronic Twilight is on here, Eva X, Cliff and Ivy, and if you look down around track 35, it only took me 30 some years, but I'm on a Cleopatra sampler. So very exciting. Everyone should go check that out. Now, moving along, speaking of other people who have a new release coming out and have a part of, I wouldn't even say goth, pre-goth history, but one of the bands that really influenced and started this genre or this idea. We've got a chance to talk to a couple of those lately, and I have with me Rodney Orpheus of the Cassandra Complex.
Hello.
Hi, Rodney. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Busy, but really, really great.
I bet. I know you've had a couple of big life changes coming up. You've got a new album that we're going to talk about coming up.
Finally.
Yeah. Why don't you start out briefly, because we have talked before. We've had an interview before where we've gone into some of your musical history, but maybe to some of our newer listeners that really want to understand, the depth of your career. Tell us a brief history of the Cassandra Complex and where you started out and some of the things that you've done.
Okay. Well, I'm originally from Ireland, hence the bizarre
lilt
mid-Atlantic accent. And I moved to Leeds in the mid-'80s, Leeds in England, and went to a nightclub there where they put on a record, the first single by Die Krupps, the German band Die Krupps.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to talk about proto-industrial, Wanne Arbeit Wanne Lohn by Die Krupps was like,
yes.
Yeah. And I jumped up on the dance floor, and there was only one other guy on the dance floor dancing around. We were both having a marvelous time. And I'm like, wow, somebody else who likes Die Krupps. How weird is that? And so later that night, I was waiting to pick up my coat from the cloakroom, and this guy was standing behind me, and we started chatting. And I was like, "Hey, you're that guy that likes Die Krupps?" He says, "Yeah, it's my birthday party, and so the DJ had to play it. I mean, it's my favorite record." And I'm like, "Great!" I said, and I was like, "Wow, what else? What other kinds of music you like?" And I said, "Oh, I love Suicide. I love Hawkwind, and I love the pop group." And he was like, "Oh, so do I." And I'm like, "What are you doing? You're Irish. What are you doing in Leeds?" He said, "Well, I came here to start a band." He said, "Like, I want to start a band too." And that's how the Cassandra Complex started. I went around his house the next day, and that was it. And then
who was that gentleman?
That was Paul Dillon. And then a few months after that, we played a couple of gigs, and a journalist came around to interview us, a guy called Andy Booth. he came around to interview us for a fanzine for Leeds University. And he really loved what we did, and he really understood it, and he loved all the influences, and he really got the music. And we were like really astonished. And afterwards, I said, maybe we should get him to join the band. And you know, because he really likes your stuff. And I wonder, does he play anything? And I'm like, let's find out. So we asked him around the next day, and it turns out he was an amazingly brilliant guitar player. So he was in the band from there on.
Isn't it?
That's it. And it's still in the band now. And that was, somebody told me, and I hadn't realized this until last week, that was 40 years ago.
Wow. It's
unbelievable. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, like when it really hits like that. So we just had an interview that, to me, again, like with you, was just one of those moments. Wow, how is this happening? With Valor from Christian Death. Mm-hmm. And one of the questions that I asked him, and I want to ask to you now, because I actually brought you up in that interview when I was talking to him about it, because I felt it had a little bit of the same vibe. How does that feel to you, to know that music has changed so much, and how it's produced, in how it comes out, and the technology we use? And you've had a career that, not just because listening to this new album that we're going to talk to soon, what Cassandra Complex was starting out versus what it is today, it's not like you guys are the Rolling Stones and you played the same album for 4 decades, you know? No, you've changed a lot in every respective album or sound, you know.
I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that's a pride. And I was talking to Valor saying kind of the same thing. But for you, as a band who was there starting out, how does it feel, or what does it mean to you that bands today still take on an influence from you, or, you know, want to remix you, or doing covers of the Cassandra Complex? When you hear that, does that hold any meaning to you, or is it just something you don't really think about a lot?
Well, our other guitar player who plays with us now, a guy called Volker Zacharias, he's from Hamburg in Germany. He played in the Cassandra Complex cover band before he joined the Cassandra Complex.
That's
so,
kind of, that
which I didn't actually realize when he came around to audition for us. And I'm like, well, let's. Do you know this song? And he was like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I know all the songs.
This song. Yeah, sure.
Play them all every Friday.
And then by the time we got to the third song, he was turning to the keyboard player and going, no, wait a minute, you're playing that wrong.
That is hilarious.
No.
You know, I think that there is some truth to that sometimes, where, you know, you as the band where you're writing it don't always take it as intensely or seriously. You know, like I, for example, really like George R.R. Martin and the Song of Ice and Fire series or something.
Sure.
And I think that it's almost impossible for him to remember everything and take it as seriously as some of his really hardcore fans. When you hear them in that group, like people, when they buy into something, they go hard on it. So I think that's an interesting point. But, you know, from a personal level, I mean, does that hold any weight with you, or do you, you know, kind of say, hey, like, this is what I think of as one of my accomplishments, that I've influenced people younger than me in the future towards this style of music? Or do you still think
that's a really tricky question? I mean, yes, I'm obviously very happy if I can influence, or if I can make someone's life better in any way at all.
Yeah,
that makes me happy. If I can connect with them emotionally in any way at all, that's very, very fulfilling. I don't really care if I inspire them to make music or not, because I think because I don't think that's more important than anything else. I think it'd be egotistic for me to say, you know, sure, it's nice for my ego when someone goes, sure, yeah, I play your songs, you know, I play records like you, and it's good for my ego. It's nice up here, but it doesn't mean anything here. What means something here is, like, if I'm standing on the stage and I look into the audience and there's some, you know, 20-year-old girl in the front row with tears coming down her eyes, that's what it's about for me.
Yeah.
That's because I know I've connected to someone on a really deep emotional level, and I've changed her life, that person's life, internally.
Yeah.
And whatever way that is up to them. I wouldn't, whether that just makes them feel better or whether it helps them get over a problem in their lives or whether it inspires them to do something, whatever that happens to be, it's all great, and that's what's really important to me. I don't really care about genres of music and inspiring musicians or whatever. Yeah, it's nice.
Sure.
But it's not.
But it's not why you do it.
It's not why I do it. No, why I do it is to be able to bridge that gap between me and the rest of the world. Really.
Yeah.
And just have that intense emotional connection with people. And whether that comes through a live concert instantly or whether it comes at a sort of remove through them listening to the records or whatever, that's really all that counts. And every time anyone, I mean, like, when we play live, after every gig, I go and hang out at the merch booth and sign autographs and talk to people and whatever. And I remember when I first went on tour, the tour manager said, "Oh, you can tell you're just on tour for the first time. You want to talk to all your fans. Give it a couple of years and you won't be doing that anymore." And I'm like, here we are, 40 years later, I'm still doing it, because it's never stopped being meaningful that way.
See, that to me that is so important, and we've been talking about that in the group a lot lately, and the article I did on promotion, because I hear so much of that there was back in the day this sense of, I don't know, part of the thing for the rock star was to be aloof or arrogant or throwing attitude, or I can't talk to my fans, these people, and that was totally accepted. It was almost kind of adding mystique to it or encouraging.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've found, I can understand why a lot of people do that, because and a lot of the audience members want that. They want they don't want a rock star to be just like them. They want them to be somebody special they can put on a pedestal, who's like, who's going to fly away in their helicopter and crash it into a swimming pool full of cocaine or whatever it is.
I've never been to that party.
I've been to parties like that, I must admit, but that's really not what it's about. I mean, that's all just a giant myth. But for some people, they want the mythology is an essential part of it. And I've never wanted that. I mean, I remember like a huge influence on me was when I was first starting like a kid. There's a band called Scritti Politti. I don't know if you've heard of Scritti Politti. No. Amazing band back in the 80s. And they did these incredible pop tunes, but they started as a weird little avant-garde punk band living in squats in London. And they put out a record called Skank Block Bologna, which is a 12-inch record on Rough Trade Records, like way back in the day. And it was an amazingly weird avant-garde post-punk before post-punk. They were brilliant. And it said on the back, we made this record by ourselves, and we pressed it here, we did this here, and here's how and they demystified the sort of, on the back of the record, they said, they give an itemized list of how much they pressed and how much it cost. And
that's awesome.
And we did it ourselves. And there was a phone number at the bottom. And it said, if you have any more questions, ring this number. So I was like, okay, what the hell? I don't know how to make a record. We didn't have YouTube videos then. We didn't have Spotify. I didn't know how to make a fucking record. So I picked up the phone and called the number, expecting to get through to Rough Trade or something like
the
that,
label or something like that.
Some admin guy, in the warehouse at Rough Trade or whatever. And Green Gartside, who's the singer from Scritti Politti, picked up the phone and said, "Hi, it's Green. What can I do for you?" And I'm like, "Oh, really sorry to bother you, but I read the back of your record and and he was like, "That's great.
Good."
And I'm like, "Do you have any questions?" I'm like, "Yes, I do." So I sat there for on the phone for about 4 hours to Green Gartside, and he explained the entire process to me of what you need to do, who you need to talk to. He gave me all the phone numbers I needed, everything else, just told me everything I needed to know. And that's how we did our first record. We just, it was all because of Green Gartside.
That is freaking incredible.
It was wonderful.
Yeah, that's where I was kind of going with it, is saying, I feel like you are ahead of your time or ahead of the curve at that point, because I think that is the norm now. Like that old rockstar mentality is buried. And today you have to be in social media,
Right.
at shows and whatnot, available to your fans on some level and accessible. And the bands that are really new and having a lot of success, like I always bring the Actors as an example, but just
Absolutely.
are very sweet, polite people that will come out after every one of their shows and say hello to everybody, let you take a picture, and I mean, are just very, but it's not even a front with them. It's very genuine, I mean, that's just how they are.
Yeah.
And I think that like you doing that is a good example of kind of ahead of time, I don't know, having an idea of what this whole social media thing was going to be. And
absolutely.
So the last nostalgia question that I want to ask you is, I noticed on your Facebook feed in the last few weeks, you must have, well, it's because you're boxing stuff up, I'm guessing, but you started breaking out all the old articles, pictures, flyers from shows, and all this stuff. And so I've been kind of following along and seeing it like, oh my God, like Rodney, there you are. And that's really amazing and fun to take your fans on a journey like that. Was there any particular one or two pieces that you found when digging through this stuff that really struck you and took you back, that you were excited? I hadn't seen that in years, and here I found it in the spot.
All of it. It was, I mean, it's been a long, like I say, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
And so I went through everything from our very earliest press cuttings from like 84, 85, I think, when we played our first concerts. I was putting up pictures from 1985 and press cuttings from there, and then taking that through to like, and like just local things from around Leeds, like Leeds on the Paper and stuff like that. And then when we first went to Germany and the Netherlands, and everything took off, and the reviews of the early records. And it's so funny looking back and seeing what people thought then.
Yeah. I mean, were there any of those kind of like, to me, when you heard my excitement at the beginning of this, like after 31 years, I was on a Clio comp. Were there any moments of things you had that you pulled out of that box where you had a moment where you said to yourself, this is really happening? Like, the band is hitting another level or something like that, that was a wake-up call for you that people are really into this?
I'll tell you, well, the first time that really hit me was the first time we played in Germany. And we were booked in Hamburg. We'd never been to Germany before. We were booked for a gig in Hamburg. And it was a little club, very small club, held about 350 people maybe. And we turned up early. We drove through the night from a gig in Holland. We turned up early in the morning in Hamburg, went in, did a sound check. It was a nice little club. Wow, it was so great. We're in Hamburg. It's, first gig in Germany. It's amazing, right? And then, so we went back to the hotel to get ready, and we were driving back to the club, like about an hour and a half before the shows. And there was a riot going on. There was a demonstration on the street, like some kind of big demonstration, like, I don't know what, and we were like, what are they demonstrating for? Why are all these people in the street? This is ridiculous. And we couldn't get up the street to the club because it was just full of people. And one of the other in the band said, maybe they're here to see us. And we all started laughing. Like, and then we got closer and realized they were all to see us. There was 1,000 people in the street trying to get into a club that held 350. And we were like, whoa, there's 1,000 people want to come see us. And, back in England, we could get 10 people and a dog, and there was and we put out a record that got universally ignored. And we came to Germany, it's 1,000, literally the whole street full of people. So we were like, this is so fucking cool. So we park up the car and then start walking through the crowd going, hey, look, we're the rock stars, man. And we're trying to get through the crowd, and people are going, get back in the line, because nobody knew who we were.
Right, what you look like.
They'd never seen us. So we were like, no, we're the band. Yeah, sure, mate, get back in the line, So it took us like 40 minutes to get into our own show.
And then all the people that were like saying that to you, as they see you letting you in the door and everything, were like, what?
when we got on stage, people were like, "Hey, aren't you that guy that I kicked you out of the line earlier?" So
That's awesome. Wow.
So that was the first moment really that it really hit us that something was going on, you know. But it was such a great. It was simultaneously huge ego boost and also a giant like smack in the face, like get back in the line. So it was pretty much perfect, you know, in boosting our ego and deflating it at the same time. So
well, and I think that goes a lot towards what you were saying earlier, that this sense of people, especially then, wanted their rock stars to be on stage and have the lights behind them with the makeup and the otherworldly kind of feel. And just when they see you down on the ground standing next to them, it's kind of like the Clark Kent thing, you know, like just a simple thing of the glasses, but like that's enough where that's too real. So I can't put those images together.
The most common comment I get from fans the first time they meet me is, "Oh, you look a lot smaller than you do on stage."
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So I wanna move on now, because we do have something exciting to talk about that you're coming on now for. You have a new record out, and it's the first one that you've done in a minute, and
the first studio album in 22 years.
Oh God, I didn't realize it had been that long, but holy crap. I know we've talked a lot about this and kind of gone back and forth a little bit as you've been working on it, but it does seem like even just talking, it's been 4 years, 3 years that you've been working on the production of this album.
So, it's been insane.
Tell me a little bit about the name of the record and when people can go on Bandcamp and the different places they can purchase it, and then B, what has changed for you, whether it's technology wise, life, you know, how you go about making time to do a record and things like this now. What's different for you on this record than 20 years ago?
Well, yeah.
Part one, tell me the record and where people can
back in the day, to go last bit of nostalgia, back in the 80s and 90s, it was quite possible for us to make a very, you know, a decent living. I mean, we weren't rich rock stars by any shape or size, but we could make a good living being a sort of, you know, B-league band, as it were. You know, we could play festivals, we could get a few hundred people in a club every night. We used to tour 200 days of the year. We'd be on tour. We toured all the time. And we made decent money, but we earned it. You know, we really
I mean, that's a lot of energy.
Oh yeah, we worked for it, and you know, we were selling CDs, and we did everything ourselves. We've never had a manager. We have a tour agent to just book tours for us, but we manage ourselves, produce ourselves. We do all our own marketing, merchandising, design. Everything is all done internally. Yeah. So it's like a little cottage industry. So we made a decent living. You can't do that anymore at that level. There's no way you can make a full-time. Anybody out there right now who thinks they're going to make a full-time living on the music, you're living in Cloud Cuckoo land. The chances of that happening are 1 in 1,000, 1 in 10,000 these days. Really difficult. So obviously we were all, one of the things is that these days, you know, we're a little bit older. Most of us have got families, you know, and you want to, as you get a little bit older, you're thinking, I don't want to just like spend 200 days on the road anymore. I'd actually like to have a nice place to live and know where my next, you know, I can go down the market and actually buy a week's worth of groceries is a nice thing. So, you know, most musicians these days who aren't at the top highest level have got real jobs, and we were doing real jobs. But I mean, all of us have been in the music business all the time. I mean, you talked earlier about technology. I'm sure you know, I'm a technology designer. I started designing. I mean, a lot of the software and hardware that people are using in their studio or live, probably came from me. So I did a lot. I was working for a lot of music tech companies like Steinberg, PreSonus, DTS. So I worked a lot with those companies.
Right. In the very beginning.
And,
Yeah.
sorry?
I said in the very beginning of kind of home studio software coming out, you were right there at the start of it, writing a lot.
Right. Yeah. One of the things I posted from the archives was me presenting on stage at Frankfurt Music Messe, presenting the very first ever virtual synthesizer, the Steinberg Model 80. So I was right there from the beginning of that, and I did all the original stuff for Cubase, VST Instruments. I was a technology evangelist for Steinberg for many years. So I was the first person to use I'm literally the first person to use virtual studio technology. The first. Simple as that. The first person to ever make a record with digital VST. Because I had it before anyone else even saw it. So I was using it in the studio before anyone was ever released. So I was, we've all been doing lots of other stuff in the business. Well,
right.
Andy, the guitar player, is a music business lawyer because he handled all our business and got so tired of record companies trying to rip us off. He went and did a law degree, and now he's a music business lawyer.
Did it for you.
And he's the lawyer for lots of bands that I'm sure every one of you have heard of. He does a lot of, he's a very, very prestigious and well-respected music business lawyer. So every time he plays with us, he's like losing money.
Right.
And Volker who's the other guitar player. He does a lot of works for record companies and does a lot of consultation for record labels in Germany. And Axel, who's our keyboard player, he's the sound engineer for Project Pitchfork, who else? Volsheim. He did some work with Volsheim and Peter Heppner. And he does, who else does he do? Oh, loads and loads of bands.
I think that's another big one is a lot of bands now get into the engineering aspect once they hit a certain tier to kind of share that for other bands. Because again, like you said, it's a way to keep your head above water while you're making the music you want to make.
Right, exactly. And it's enjoyable. And so we've all been in the business for the whole time. And I've been producing on the bands and remixing and stuff like that. So that's what we've been doing, but we wanted to make another record. So we started writing. We've been writing songs all the time. We're always writing. So we started writing like when we were touring last, which is a few years ago. We've been writing like, during sound checks and in the back of the bus or whatever. And if anyone's heard the last live album we did from the last tour, there's actually 3 new songs on that live album. That we're still very early prototype version of the songs that we were playing live because we wanted to play some of the new songs live and just get a feel for.
Let's drive them. Yeah.
Because it was so long since we've done a album. We're like, do we still know how to do this?
That is true. I mean, because you do get that mentality of, like you said, when you have that nostalgia from people and they want you to play the hits, but saying to yourself, can we still write a song, play it for an audience they've never heard before, and have them be like, yes, what is this?
Right, exactly.
It is. It's a
exactly because playing the hits is easy. Like we do a lot of festival shows, whatever. People want to hear the greatest hits, so you go up there and you play. But we try and move it around a lot because we've got so many great hits. Let's face it. But we wanted so we played a couple of the songs live then, and then we were writing a bit more, but it was kind of like we had so many other things going on. There didn't seem any impetus to actually get on with the record. And though I really wanted to do it, I mean, it was just there was always something else above it in the stack of things to do. Like I'll come back to the record next week. But next week something else comes up, or somebody rings me up from a company and says, "Hey, we want you to consult for this for 3 months or whatever." So it always got pushed down the stack, which was driving me crazy. And then hey, COVID came along, and I had actually just before COVID, I decided the record was taking too long, and I really needed to put it at the top of the stack. So I started really seriously working out, and I started recording some vocals. And I had everything set up in the studio, and everything was going great. And I was putting down some guide vocals, and then I got COVID right at the very beginning. And I had it pretty bad. I had long COVID for months. It was just horrific. So I couldn't sing. There was no.
I was going to say, what did that do to your voice?
Pretty bad.
Like even after you started to feel better or whatnot, like did it have a long-term effect for you?
Yes, it did. But also, I was actually also very sick because I had a tumor in my throat. So I had to go to hospital and have an operation twice, actually. So got scars in my throat and everything. Yeah, so that didn't help.
But you got through that somehow.
Yeah, and they, before they did, they said, you know, you gotta understand this is a risky procedure. You might not ever be able to sing again. I'm like, shit,
that's
man.
terrifying.
You might not be able to speak again. Which my wife was like,
well, but no, that
was pretty terrifying.
As a musician, I mean, I know
entire life as a singer, that was pretty terrifying. But as it turned out, my voice is actually probably better, I think. I mean, the first time I started singing it, it felt to me like my voice was even better. It actually was really good. So that was a long process. And I had radiotherapy and radiation burns. My home, it was nasty stuff.
Wow, geez.
It was hardcore, yeah. It was hardcore. I mean, I've never really talked about this to people. I don't even know why I'm talking about it on a goddamn video right now, because
I have that effect on people. You just feel calm and want to, share.
Yeah. Anyway, so it took a long time to get back from that. And then COVID came along. But the good thing was that, this is my studio here, well, what was being torn apart right now. But I just got a new house before COVID, and this studio is a separate building. It's at the bottom of the garden. And I built it up to be my studio. So when the lockdown happened, I was like, okay, this is it now. I can't leave here. I can't go out of the house.
Right, you're locked in.
I'm locked in, but I'm locked in a studio. So
that is one of the other things too. You talk about a change in how it's done now. Mm-hmm. Your computer, again, because of your software and working on that, you basically have every guitar, every amplifier, every effect, anything ever made in all of recorded time. Mm-hmm.
It's front right here, right now.
Right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you're locked into the studio. You have every instrument that you could ever imagine and your thoughts, and then boom, what is it that you wanted to try and write?
Exactly. In a nutshell, that was exactly what happened. And of course, also the band, I couldn't see the band either because two of them live in Hamburg in Germany,
right?
And Andy lives in Manchester, and I'm currently in London. But so I rigged up a system where we could all video chat like this, but also I rigged up a system where we all had the same software in every one of our studios, in every one of our houses. So I could just log in, and if I wanted to work with Andy, he could play, and I could hear it like right away. And
no latency or anything on it?
Well, there's always, you can't play in real time. You can't play in real time, but I can play a backing track, and he can play over it, and I can hear whether it's good or bad or right or wrong, or if it feels whatever. And then it appears in my system, my Studio One system here, a few seconds later, or a few minutes later, whatever it needs to be. And then I can just put it, and so that's how we did it. I mean, we did all our parts completely remotely, but ironically, we were probably working closer together than we normally do. So we did that very much together. And then when we had all the parts recorded, I just sat here and mixed it. And then, but I was able to, I have a private SoundCloud account. So every time I was doing mixes or whatever, I would put them up at the end of the day on SoundCloud and send them a message on Facebook, and everyone could listen to it and go, yeah, that's good. That's what about blah, 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 blah. So we had a continual to and fro. So it was.
I've never really thought about that before, but that's really interesting that because of, like you said, the pandemic or a lot of things, that people are doing this so much now where you're sending me a track from Leeds and I'm getting it over in Michigan and mixing into something, and then I send something back. We don't have the in studio like camaraderie as much anymore, maybe. But I think there's something to be said for how much attention you pay now to what's being said and sent back and forth, because you're alone without distraction and you're hearing it and singled in on nothing but it. When you said that, I really just got a picture that I think there are some ways that I think it's a lot better, because you have so much clarity in your communication.
Yeah, absolutely. But as I say, and that, yes, that's true. But as I say, we also use video conferencing as well, so we have real time. So we could crack jokes and make fun, which we always,
That is,
we're always. I mean, this band runs on sarcasm, so
that's what's in the tank.
So, and that's a lot easier when you've got a video camera rather than over text. But yeah.
So you had this, you're going back and forth, you're sending tracks back and forth, but after 20 years, like you said, it's not like you guys decided to do this to, I don't know, go back on the road because you needed the cash or something.
No.
That's that.
No. We lose money making.
Exactly. That's my point.
I mean, we're all highly professional guys,
Right. So my point is, you guys had something else that inspired you in 2020, 2009. We want to get together to write a record again because we have something new to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was the impetus, or what led you all to decide that you wanted to do this after 20 years?
It's a lot of different things. One, we're highly political. We've always been very political band, and there's a lot of really shit politics going on. And again, one of these things people say to me, when you're young, you'll be like so left wing and whatever, but when you get older, you'll be much more conservative, blah, 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 blah. Wrong. Not at all. I'm much more hardcore progressive and revolutionary than I ever was before. And I was a lot before. So there's a lot of frustration of that kind of thing to come out. But there's also, it's not like, I craft the music from a technical point of view very carefully. But the inspiration and the impetus is never conscious. It's never like I go, I think I need to write a song that sounds like this.
Sure.
I'll have an emotional reaction to something and I'll want to express it. And that's it. That's the end of the story. That's really all there ever is. And I don't stop feeling. I may be older and wiser, but I don't stop feeling. And I'm still I can still be as romantic or as political or as frustrated or as confused as I was anytime in the past.
Or you could just be thinking of Elvis.
Or I could just be thinking of Elvis, yeah. Which is where you come in, actually.
Oh, okay.
There's a link. I was thinking of you when I wrote, the first song on the album, for people who haven't heard it yet, is called Hotline to Elvis, and it's about Elvis. Well, it's actually about the fact because I was seeing a bunch of QAnon things, and I was watching a lot of QAnon things, and there was a big discussion going on of something I was watching where they're saying, well, isn't it weird that all these, redneck people have suddenly started believing these weird things? And I'm thinking, that's not weird at all. Because when I was young, they used to believe that Elvis was still alive.
He's in a Kalamazoo bathroom right now.
Exactly. And that's where
I see him on the reg.
You're in Kalamazoo.
I am.
And the number one place in the world for sightings of Elvis is Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was thinking you were in my mind because I was thinking about Elvis and I started thinking Kalamazoo. Oh yeah, that's where Ken comes from. Because Elvis is supposed to be still alive in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
So
I started writing this song
from the amount of acid between the three universities of Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
There could be some correlation there too, but who knows?
Who knows? So I was really thinking about that, and then I remembered that there used to be an Elvis hotline where you could call it up and you could report sightings of Elvis.
Yes.
Right. And I found the original advert for that, you know, and that's what starts the record. That when it says the record, call 1-900-909 Elvis. That's a real advert for the Elvis hotline from the 1980s. 1970s, 1980s, somewhere back there. That is a real advert. And as soon as I heard that, it was like, I know what the chorus is now. 1-900-909 ELVIS Elvis. You know, and it was just instantly the most catchy chorus you've ever heard in your life. And so that's where the song came from. And I tried so hard to get Kalamazoo into the song, right? But I couldn't. I could not figure out a way to get Kalamazoo to fit in. It's like, you know,
just ask Glenn. He would have told you. He knows how to do it.
Well, okay. Obviously, he's a smarter man than me. But so I tried forever to try and write Kalamazoo into one of the verses, but it didn't happen. So I'm very sorry about not mentioning Kalamazoo and Hotline to Elvis. But okay. Kalamazoo was there in spirit.
I think that there's only two people I know that ever pulled it off, and one of them is Glenn Miller. So, I mean, that is a tough act to follow, you know, in Glenn Miller. That's
okay. I'll give you that. So anyway, so that's how and that was actually the last song we wrote. That whole song was written right all the way through, right in the lockdown. That was the last song we wrote for the album. That actually came out as the first song on the album, just because it's so completely crazy and catchy. But
sure,
and it's a very funny song in a lot of ways, you know. And the whole song is about all the most ludicrous things that people have really said about Elvis. You know, everything in it is real. Everything in it is bizarre but real, including the hotline number itself. It was a real hotline. But there's a very serious thing behind it, which is the propensity for people to believe absolutely absurd things. You know, and have a mass belief in it, because the belief that Elvis didn't really die at one point was hugely widespread.
We laugh about it now, and it was in the World Weekly News and stuff like that all the time. But also, people forget, just like QAnon or whatnot now, there is a lot of people that really believed Elvis was alive and that there was this conspiracy that he'd faked his death, that it had to do with his manager, that this wasn't just the punchline or joke that we think of it as 20 or 30 years later. This was very real in that moment. And that's the thing to remember too, with like the QAnon and whatnot. That's very true, where it's easy for us to crack jokes or, you know, Saturday Night Live or whatnot but like, this is very real. These people got together. They went to a pizza place and like tried to shoot people. They went to the Capitol like with weapons and plans, and like, this is not just a tee-hee-hee funny joke of these silly, like, this is also very real and frightening.
Absolutely. Because the reason why people wanted to believe that Elvis was still alive was they wanted the white savior myth, you know. Same reason they want Donald Trump. It's they want this you know, wonderful guy who represents everything that they think is, like, you know, who's a revolutionary but on the side of the white establishment, whatever that means, you know. And so you can trace a straight line from Hotline to Elvis back then, you know, right up to today, and so that was the point of the song. So that's the background to that song. So.
I think, like, with a lot of the songs on here have that kind of, and one of the things I've loved about this album, double meaning of, yes, a tongue-in-cheek, like you said, this band runs on sarcasm, joke to it, but at the same time is very serious. And although your sound, to me, when I think of Cassandra Complex, the early sound had a very punk rock sound. I don't think that's true sound-wise as much now. I think it's a much more progressive, evolved sound, a lot of, you know, dancier elements in it, a lot of, you know, but
we can play
it has this, like, concept wise, Dead Kennedys feel is, I think, the closest thing on this album that I think of it as, with stuff like this or Heavy Lies the Crown, or a lot of these that, yes, it has a funny lilt to it, but at the same time, you were talking about some very intense, very progressive politics.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, you're talking about Crown Lies Heavy on the King, which was inspired by Donald Trump, Boris Johnson. It's about that kind of that elitism. The whole thing. It's about these people who are born with a silver spoon in their mouth. They're born to rule, and they just assume that they're going to rule forever on top of all of us.
And the idea of being born, like you said, on third base, and acting like you've hit a home run or something like that. Why can't everybody else just raise yourself up from your bootstraps? Sure, like I was born with $10 million and, all the contacts in the world, but anybody could have done this just like I did. What? And how out of tune or out of touch those people are. And they're the people that are leading every country at every level, just about. And no wonder the world is where it is.
Yeah. You look at someone like Elon Musk, classic example. He's all over the social media at the moment. And all the right-wing guys are like, yeah, he's like a self-made millionaire. Yeah, his dad owned an emerald mine in apartheid South Africa. He got his money from his dad, basically having indentured black slaves.
Kids down in mines and shit.
Kids down in mines, yeah. That's where his money came from. He didn't even invent Tesla. He just bought that, and but part of the deal when he bought Tesla was that they would say that he designed it, even though he didn't.
Right. No, it's true. A very Thomas Edison type situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Yeah, same thing. Yeah. So that's what these people are about. So fuck them.
Fuck them indeed. Tell me a little bit about what you're excited for. So you haven't got around to. Tell me about the name of the album, where it's going to be out, where people can get it, and why you're fired up about this after 20 years.
Well, the album's called The Plague, which should be pretty obvious why it's called The Plague, I guess, because we recorded during lockdown, all the rest of it. But it's also a reference to Albert Camus, because it's always as you pointed out, everything to do with the Cassandra Complex, it's always got a double meaning. Nothing is simple. So Albert Camus, French novelist, wrote a novel called Existentialist, wrote a novel called The Plague, which is really an amazing, set in the 1950s in Algeria, I believe. It's a long time since I read it. Great novel, by the way. It's amazing. And he's most well known for the novel that I think came after that, which is L'Étranger, The Stranger.
Yep.
Which was like a classic text of existentialism.
And The Cure did a song about that.
Which The Cure's Killing an Arab is about that. Yeah. Killing an Arab is what happens in The Stranger by Camus. Yep. So it's a reference to Albert Camus as well. Because it just says, hey, look, we're still very intellectual, So that was really good. And then when I was working on it, it really I think I really rediscovered my feel a lot. And it took a long time, because it's been a long time since we did anything. And I was really trying to recapture the excitement that I had right at the very beginning when I first started making records. And it's very hard. It took a lot of work to get back to the beginning, if you like, in a way. And so that was, and really, and the other problem, of course, was the problem with having my own studio and being locked in it is I had no time pressure. So I spent I got into the classic problem of spending 16 hours listening to a snare drum, going maybe a little bit more than a minute, and I had to wean myself off of that. I had to throw a lot of stuff out and go, no, let's just get to the crux of what this is about. And I think we really managed to do that on the record. And I think the songs are fucking great, to be honest. I mean, it had to be brilliant. I mean, that was the thing. It's like after so long away, I didn't want to come back with something that was, not bad.
Solid.
I wanted to come back with something that would just smack people in the face where they just go, wow. And hopefully we've achieved that. So you tell me.
And that is, I do agree with that 100%. But I think a big part of that is kind of what you said is when you let 20 years go by and you're 20 years, all of you in the band, wiser, more knowledgeable about what's I mean, sure, but no, you are. And I think it goes back to something you said a minute ago is I think it's crazy that people would think you would necessarily get more conservative or colder in your old age or more just all about yourself and money. Whereas I think it's very natural that people, when you grow, as you get older, it's because you can think of other people's perspectives more. You've walked in more shoes. You've had more, things happen to you that
you've had more relationships,
someone else's perspective, which I think should make most people more progressive or more open to alternative ideas. And I think when you take 20 years between an album to really, where it wasn't about putting out the next thing because we had to, because like you said, it was your job and you had to get back on the road and you're playing 100 nights a year and all this stuff. When you have 20 years to just take time with your ideas and your knowledge and sit down and be like, we could make something really, really great here. And there's nobody beating on the door asking us to do this, telling us you have to have this done by this date. You had all the time in the world to put out exactly the record that you wanted.
Correct. Though admittedly, we didn't spend 20 years on it.
Well, sure. But
though in the last couple of months, it was feeling like it was 20 years.
But you did spend 20 years.
We spent 20 years living.
Experience and ideas.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So wonderful. I wanted to have a little bit of fun and talk about some other things because we share some other interests besides music that we can.
What, you don't want to talk about more about the album? Come on, I'm here.
We're going to do that too. Okay, all right. We can talk about the album some more here. Tell me a little bit about what is one piece of technology, instrument, something that you'd never used on a record before, maybe because it didn't exist, that was absolutely quintessential to this record? Something new you tried.
There was a plugin that I tried that is an emulation of a very rare 1970s Neve analog mixing console that Led Zeppelin and Steve Albini used.
Led Zeppelin, they were one of those classic rock bands?
Yeah, I think some people may have heard of them. I'm a big fan, by the way. But anyway, and this was like a very old school, it's a very, very, very old school mixing desk. This is an emulation old school mixing. And generally, I don't really care too much about emulations of whatever, I just like whatever sounds good. But for some reason, and it's very odd and strange, but for some reason, I just clicked with it. And it really brought me back to my youth when I first started as a kid mixing in old crappy analog consoles. And I ended up using it on every channel of every song on the record. And that really that's what made the sound of the record, because suddenly it really clicked. And it was, as I say, it was really interesting because I'd been using all of these other incredibly complex VST plugins and stuff, and using them well and getting some decent sounds. But then, and I ended up going to this thing that emulated something from when I was a child, and it really clicked, and it brought me back to the feel of making the very first record on a really crappy old analog desk that we had in a basement in Leeds. And it felt and sounded like that, and it just sounded like the Cassandra Complex. And it was real, as I say, it was like a huge full circle right round. And it was kind of funny that it was a VST plugin, and which, and I'd been there since the beginning developing the VST technology to get to the point where I could get something that was just like what I used in my basement 40 years ago. But that was a huge thing, and so it was really wonderfully. And again, it's another one of those wonderful double meaning of the Cassandra Complex. It was something that was supremely modern because it had just been invented, but it was also something that was really old and original.
Yeah.
And so I was able to marry those things together, which I think was very much epitomizes what the plague is about, you know, and the sound on it. So
yeah, the double entendre of just that.
Right, because I think the record sounds very modern and very new, but it also sounds like a classic rock record, I think, in a lot of ways too. At least I hope so. I mean,
no,
I find it very hard to say, look at my great record, without sounding like an egotistic idiot, but it is. So, you know.
Look, hey, I'm a firm believer in the fact of, I think the opposite happens way more. We have this, I don't know, imposter syndrome mentality in music and as artists a lot.
The Dunning-Kruger effect.
Sure, and I don't think.
Have you heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Two psychologists, Dunning and Kruger, they realized that stupid people always overestimate how good they are, and very talented people always underestimate how good they are. And the reason for that is that dumb people have no sense of how to measure what good is because they're too stupid to understand. Whereas intelligent people usually underestimate things because they see how difficult and complex things really are. So
that feels like you just described me and my wife's relationship, you know, constantly where I'm the stupid one and she's the smart one in the scenario. So.
Believe me, I assumed that from the get-go.
Yeah. So
anyway, back to the album.
back to the album, but specifically another thing I wanted to ask is, are you guys going to be out to play and support it? Like you said.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. The first show.
Tell me about where that's going to happen. Any festivals or anything?
Yes. We've got the first show is in June. It'll be the first show we played since COVID because we absolutely refused to play during that period. Yeah. And that's in Oberhausen in Deutschland. Oberhausen, Germany. It's the New Waves Day Festival with and the Gary Newman, The Damned, the original lineup of The Damned. From the very first album, which is like when they were amazing. Who else is playing? And also the Trees, I think are playing. We're playing, and Pink Turns Blue, I believe, is one we're playing.
Very cool.
So it's a pretty good lineup.
Gary Newman still rocks it. Like I saw him a couple years back, and he still puts on a hell of a show.
Yes, absolutely lovely man as well. Really, really sweet person.
I've never hung out with Gary Newman. I'm not on that level, but it's cool that you have.
He's doing great, and he's well deserved. I mean, I still love the very first Gary Newman albums, like Pleasure Principle and Our Friends Electric and so on. But anyway,
same here. But I loved, My Name Is Ruin. I thought was one of the best albums I'd heard in a long time when it came out. I was playing that for everybody and going nuts when it came out.
Yeah, he's really reinvented himself. So more power to him. So we're doing that, and then we're doing in end of July. End of July we're doing Mira Luna Festival in Germany, which is a huge, huge golf festival, and that's with the Sisters of Mercy are playing that, which would be great.
I've heard of them.
Yeah, well,
I mean, but wait, would they be at a goth festival?
Oh, yeah, they'll be there if you're paying them. Yeah. No, the Sisters are headlining, which is good because we're old friends. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So we're doing that one with this, and there's a whole bunch of other bands who names escape me, but I know the Sisters are playing. And
I mean, just for that, I mean, anytime Andrew's coming out in the Sisters, it's going to be a big deal, and I know, like you said, you guys go way back, so that'll be a lot of fun to get to do that and play.
I mean, Andrew and I have been friends since the beginning when Leeds.
Yeah,
we both started at the same time. So
I remember the last interview we talked about. You told us the story of meeting Andrew at that pub. Yeah.
Right. Yep. And so we've got that, and then we got a third festival in Germany in September, which is the Nocturnal Kulturnacht Festival in Deutzen, which is a fantastic small festival. It's a smaller festival, but it's still got a couple of thousand people maybe, and we're headlining that one. And that's an amazing festival. It's in a forest, and the stage is in a forest, so you're right in the middle of a forest, and it's beautifully atmospheric, especially at night. It's going to be great headlining.
That sounds like, are people like camping out there, like Woodstock style or something?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Everyone camps in the forest, and it's fabulous. It's one of my favorite shows to play, and I'm really happy. And as I say, we're headlining it, which is going to be amazing. And I think we've got because the problem with playing festivals is usually you only get about 45 minutes.
Right.
And with our back catalogue, 45 minutes, you're not even scratching the surface, you know.
Right.
But I mean, we could easily play a 3-hour show and still have plenty of songs left over. But I think at NCN we're doing like an hour and a half, which will be excellent. And then, so that we have those 3 lined up already. There's another one on the horizon, but I can't talk about it yet. Okay. Because they still haven't firmed it up, but there's a very good chance there'll be a 4th festival in a different country, not in Germany.
Well, good. So not just all in Germany, because some of the rest of us would love to have you out and see you. You know, I look forward to when we get you out here in America one of these days.
Well, it's going to be a lot easier in future, isn't it? Because
That's true. America. That's true.
Yeah, I'm actually packing up because I'm moving to Los Angeles. So.
Yeah, that's really.
You heard it here first, folks.
That's an exclusive, but. How do you think that's going to either, you know, with the rest of the band or anything else, open up opportunities for you because you'll get a chance to maybe work with some other people and do some other things out in Los Angeles? Or do you think that, I don't know, that makes it more complicated with you having to stay in touch with everybody and continue to work on material?
Well, that's one of the advantages of the lockdown situation, because during lockdown it didn't matter where we were. It could have been. It wouldn't matter if we were next door or a different country. We had to learn
seeing each other anyhow.
Yeah, we weren't seeing each other anyhow. We had to learn to work remotely, and we did it very, very successfully. So that gave me the impetus to go, okay, now I can go to Los Angeles, which is somewhere I've always wanted to go. I really love it in California. So I think we're still going to be able to work. I mean, we're already maybe a quarter of the way through the next album.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and there's going to be and the next album could be out before the end of the year, but certainly by next year latest. This one is just the start now, really. So we're already working on a bunch more stuff, and there'll be just found out we have the rights to another one of our older albums, which I'll be remastering as well. So I reckon it won't make any difference to the work style that we have now. I mean, I'm going to be doing a lot of flying to doing shows in Europe.
Right.
So I'm still going to be in Germany quite a bit anyway during the summer. So I reckon we'll probably be working a lot together during the summer anyway. So we'll just see what happens. So it definitely opens possibilities. It also makes it a lot easier for playing at the USA. If people want me to play in the USA, I'm sure we can figure something out.
Now, would you ever consider that? You know, because you've done solo albums before. I own some of them. Would you ever consider doing something like that where you'd put together a band of people that you have out there, whether it's in the States or Los Angeles?
Oh, we did that before.
Your solo stuff?
We've already did that. When we did Wetware, I was spending half my time in LA when we did the Wetware album in 2000. And that was actually recorded with Volker in Germany and me in LA most of the time. But what happened was that we, from 2 for 2, were doing a tour in the USA, and Daniel from Front asked if I wanted to do the tour with them, because they're really good friends and a wonderful band. So I said, yeah, but I couldn't afford to fly the rest of the band out. So I had 2 Americans playing with the band. Funny enough, one of the Americans was originally one of the guys who played with us in Leeds. He was a US exchange student who played with us when we first started, and then had gone back to the US That was Chris Haskett, who was the guitar player for Rollins band, Henry Rollins, and David Bowie. Chris played for David Bowie as well. And so he joined the band, and another friend called Mira, who played with Faith and the Muse, a very good friend, she joined the band. So we toured as a three-piece in the US with Front, and it was like Cassandra Complex West, if you like. And then later on, when we did a major tour in Europe, they came over to Europe with us, and we had two Germans with the band as well. And so we had like a Talking Heads expanded lineup kind of thing going on, where we had a huge lineup. We had two female keyboard players and two guitar players, a bass player, and it was like this giant, like, super thing, and it was amazing. So it was really good. So we kind of had Cassandra Complex West and Cassandra Complex Europe, going on at the same time. So, we have always had a very flexible lineup. So, hey, who knows? Who knows what will happen? I mean, I'd definitely like to play in the US again. So
I think that's, I don't know, going forward, got to be kind of the, I don't know, modern way to do this and to do tours anymore. I think that you have to have that kind of flexibility for a lot of the reasons we've talked about during this entire interview. The game has changed, and the way money works on it changed, and things like that. I think bands that have that kind of idea and flexibility are the ones that are going to pull it off and be able to succeed, because it is tough to do, like you said, just long, constant on the road tours. Like, some bands pull it off nowadays, but to me, I got to imagine it is a strain. I know I couldn't pull it off.
Right. Well, I did it for a long time.
So we've been talking for a while. I wanted to hear a little bit about some of the other things that you have going that I find really interesting. And that's whether it's in the role-playing, science fiction, and most importantly, your Twitch channel, which is extremely active in terms of gaming and socially letting people in that way. Because I think, we talked a lot about how inviting people in to kind of have another piece of your life is an important part of engaging people with music at this point. And this is something that you do really, really effectively. Tell me a bit about how you got into that, and how it is a source of energy for you or enjoyment.
Well, I've been a gamer since before computer games were invented. I designed my first board game when I was 12. And I didn't even know there was such a thing as designing board games. It never even clicked, but I started designing board games, and I would get all the kids in the neighborhood would come around, because we played board games together. So I started designing new ones, and the kids in the neighborhood would come around, and I had a big table set up in my dad's shed, and we'd sit there and play board games all day long. And so that's what I started doing. And then when I first moved to Leeds, I met a couple of guys in a bar who were walking home to where I was. They were neighbors in the next street, and they were like, "Yeah, do you want to come around and play some games sometime?" And I'm like, "Sure." And I went around to the house, and they were playing these amazingly new board game things that I'd never seen before, like from Steve Jackson games, like Car Wars and Illuminati and stuff like that. Yeah. And they started playing. They were playing RuneQuest, an RPG called RuneQuest, and I'm like, "This is amazing!" And I got really into these games. So I got really into playing Car Wars, and was playing Car Wars a lot. And then I started writing stuff for Car Wars. And on a whim, I sent it to Steve Jackson Games, and they loved it, and they sent me a check back, and I'm like, "Whoa!" And that was my first ever writing job. My first ever actual paid creative job was writing games. And this is before I was making music, but I hadn't made a record or anything. Right. So my first creative work was actually designing stuff for Car Wars for Steve Jackson. And then my girlfriend at the time was a huge Star Trek fan, massive Star Trek fan. And I was in the local Virgin Records one day, and they had an RPG section, and they had a Star Trek role-playing game. And I'm like, "Holy shit, my girlfriend's going to love this. I can get serious brownie points." So I immediately bought it and started running a Star Trek campaign, which went on for 4 years, I think. And she played Captain Cindy Sagan, the great granddaughter of
Carl.
Carl F. Sagan. Yeah,
That's
who
awesome.
was a California bimbo who was, the captain of a starship. And it was great. I ran this massive Star Trek campaign, and Star Trek actually was that was fastest Star Trek, not the modern Star Trek RPG.
Yeah,
which is crappy. But anyway,
I love.
But Star Trek's actually a brilliant thing to run as an RPG, because you don't have to explain the universe. No one's going to go, how does a phaser work? Because everyone knows you can put a phaser on stun,
Right.
And it's like you can go, hey, beam me up, because everybody knows what that means. Everybody knows what a Vulcan is and a Klingon is. You don't have any explanation of how it works. You just go, oh, Star Trek. It's such an intense, as any nerd already knows how everything works. And so it was a good RPG to start with. So I started running Star Trek, and I ran Call of Cthulhu for a long time. And
Classic.
Absolutely. And played a lot of Middle-earth role-playing, and we had a shitload of games. Paranoia, all the classics. So that was what I did when I wasn't making music back then. And then, of course, I had to stop doing that when I was touring, because I was on the road all the time. It was nothing but... So I didn't game for quite a while.
Your band didn't roll dice back at the hotel room?
No. Tell man. No, well, when I was on tour, the last thing I could do was RPG, because I couldn't speak. When I tour, my band refused to let me talk. I had to stay in the back of the bus and shut up, because I've got to save my voice. So no one's allowed to talk to me. I just sit at the back of the bus and read books, which is how I ended up writing my first book, because I got so bored sitting in the back of the bus, I decided to write a book. And that was my first book. That's how that came about. So anyway, and then just a few years ago, I started really getting back into gaming again. So I now run RPGs online quite a bit. So I run Savage Worlds online. I run, on my Twitch channel, actually a lot of the stuff I had up there is gone now, but there's still a few of the RPG sessions I was running. I had an all-girl gamer group that was just fantastic. That's because awesome. You don't have all the ego shit you get with so many guy gamers. And that was really fun. So we streamed a whole bunch of a fantasy campaign I was running with the Savage Jets, as it were called. And that was really a lot of fun. And I ran Achtung Cthulhu, which is an excellent spin-off of Call of Cthulhu set in World War II, where you fight Nazis and Lovecraftian monsters. So it's 2 for 1. So I do a lot of RPGing. And I've still got an entire RPG that I've written in the back there somewhere that I haven't released yet. Actually, if you look right above my finger, is all those books there. Mm-hmm. Those are all RPGs.
All game books, nice.
Yeah, those are all game books. That's Symbaroum up there, which is a wonderful Gothic fantasy game.
Which one?
Symbaroum. It's an amazing game. It's like D&D done right and made more Gothic. It's an absolute must. It's from Sweden. And then what's in there? There's some comic books there. The big white one there, that's a collected works of Grant Morrison. That's The Invisibles by Grant Morrison, which was a wedding present from Grant Morrison. So there you go. Because when he was writing it, he was listening to the Cassandra Complex.
That's very cool. A good friend of mine that's on the group, Artie and the Wolves, their band, is good friends.
Sure,
always telling me stories about what an interesting and nice fellow he is.
Absolutely, good guy. So anyway, so that's why I was doing a lot of RPGs. So I started like streaming them online again during lockdown. There was nothing else to do. So I still run a game. Actually, this sweatshirt. Funny you should mention this. I did. This was not intentional, but this is actually the. You can't see the name because it's black on black in true Gothic style. But this is the logo of my gaming guild.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, we even have our little merchandising. So I've been running a gaming guild for about 20 years. We play RPGs. We play video games as well. So we play a lot of GTA. So another reason for going to
that
LA.
One where you have like parties of whether it's not Skyrim Online, but that
Elder Scrolls Online
or GTA.
Elder Scrolls. Yeah, we have a lot of
Elder Scrolls Online. And I always see that you
Quite a
have
lot of
parties with a bunch of people that look like they're just showing up to like a cocktail party with their characters or whatnot to hang out and talk. So
Yeah. So yeah, if you go to the Twitch channel, there's a bunch of stuff from Elder Scrolls Online. I think there's some stuff from Fallout 76. I play a lot.
what's your Twitch channel so people can find it and join in?
It's Twitch Rodney 418.
Boom. Okay.
Twitch TV / Rodney 418. Or just type Rodney Orpheus, it'll come up anyway. There's a few things up there, but I haven't been very active on there. I stopped streaming because I really wanted to get this album finished.
Right.
So I gave myself an ultimatum: no more streaming until the album's done. But now the album is done. So what I'm actually thinking of doing, I'm actually thinking of holding a release party online in GTA, because I have a huge criminal enterprise in Grand Theft Auto Online, and I own a nightclub. Because I was thinking, how can I promote this record? And I'm thinking, and I went, oh shit, you own a nightclub in Grand Theft Auto.
Just invite everybody around the world.
Just invite everyone to your nightclub in GTA.
Very cool.
It's not that hard. So maybe I'll do that this weekend or something. I've got, once all the packing's done, I might set something up and do a release party in my nightclub in Grand Theft Auto. Or I have a big house in Elder Scrolls Online, so maybe we'll do a release party there.
I mean, you could even flip-flop back and forth, having two of them.
Well, maybe we'll do a couple of different ones. We'll see.
Yeah.
One of the things we thought of doing in Elder Scrolls is that quite a lot of people in my guild have got big houses and castles and stuff that they've been decorating. So we're actually thinking of doing a sort of a pub crawl kind of thing in Elder Scrolls.
Elder Scrolls Town and Country.
Yeah, so we take a song, we'll play one song from the album in one person's castle, and then go to somebody else's, because lots of people have got amazingly gothic and incredibly elaborate decor and houses they've built that look incredible. So some of the guild are actually building things up to try and make like nightclubs in there, so we can just go and bounce around and hang out. And I think that would be a good way to introduce the album to people, so they can actually. Because I don't want to diss DJs, online DJs, because great, I'm happy that DJs do what they do, but I personally don't find it interesting to watch someone with going like this for an hour. Other people love it, and that's great and good for them. Personally, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't want to watch a DJ.
Get pretty creative.
I don't find watching a DJ particularly interesting. So I thought, and I don't want to just do a stream of me sitting there going, isn't my record good? Because that's even more boring. So that's why I thought maybe I'll try and do some stuff from my various online properties, if you like, in gaming, and actually try and marry it together.
No, I think that's really interesting. And I think that's a lot the future. And again, from talking to you, as we have in the last few years, that's one of the things I've always thought was really interesting is the goth subculture does have a tendency to get really caught up in the past and not willing to embrace new ways that new people are finding music, And I feel like you are one that there is no questioning your bona fides in terms of being a part of the scene that chooses then to embrace what the modern people in the scene, the young people in the scene are doing to get their music, whether it's, like you said, online gaming, a big part of it, Twitch streaming, a big part of it. I'm still waiting for the Rodney Orpheus TikTok. We'll have to see how that plays out. But, who knows? I wouldn't say.
I have been holding away from the TikTok thing because I know that's another rabbit hole that's going to really capture me. So I'm still trying to figure out how best to do that. And the other thing is, though, that I don't want. One of the reasons for doing the stuff for doing an album party in Elder Scrolls or GTA or whatever. Is not because, wow, wouldn't that be a good gimmick? It's
right. It's
because
you love
I actually play there. That's what I do.
Right.
It's not like I'm getting some marketing consultant to buy me a nightclub in GTA. Yes. I own it already. It's what I do.
Yeah.
And so it's authentic. It's not me built. It's not me going, let's have a crazy gimmick.
Right. And just like anything in life, people can tell that you're genuine or not. And that's when it works, is when it's genuine.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right.
So we'll see.
Well, we are coming up on the point here of the interview where I will have a spin out to a song off the new album. And I'm really excited to have you back talking about this with us. This album, I think, is going to take things by storm. I think it really has quality and potential to it. And again, that it has something for everybody in the sense that it has that soul of 40 years ago in the scene with the conceptual sound and aesthetics of 2022. And I feel like that sweet spot blend that this album hits on is what makes it really special, because synthesis of ideas like that is the name of the game right now. You know, to really be able to have a conversation that spans across multiple generations that they can all find relatable. So I am extremely excited about this. I know what song I would pick because of personal connection for reasons that we chose earlier, but I will ask you, is there one that really epitomizes to you like the first thing you should hear on the album that you think will draw people in?
That is a question that we inside the band argued about for about 2 months.
Did anybody come to a resolution?
Not really. I mean, we released Old Boys Network to DJs in Germany a couple of weeks ago because we thought that was one of the most instant songs on the record. And it's also very classic Cassandra Complex sound. It's like heavy sequencers, heavy guitars, and it's fast and furious. So Old Boys Network is I think in a lot of ways one of the ones that's most instant. Or Hotline to Elvis, because it's so catchy. You hear that one time and you're singing it for the rest of the day.
I mean, that's just my vote because but
absolutely.
All right.
I knew that would be your vote. But when people say to me, which is your favorite? I mean, there's some. I mean, really, I'm so proud of these songs. I mean, We Defend Ourselves, I think, is incredible.
That's a jam. And it's just, I don't know, like, it's so especially, I mean, I don't know for you as much there in Leeds, well, maybe you're going to come to understand, but to me, that conversation as an American in particular, when you talk about the political ramifications, hits really hard, because that is one we are literally staring down the barrel of.
Yeah. So, and that to me, that song's like when I was building that, I was thinking of things like Welcome to the Pleasure Dome by Frankie Goes to Hollywood, or Propaganda, those kind of Trevor Horn style huge productions. And that's a big production record on We Defend Ourselves. That was a huge amount of work, and it's a very complex song, but I think it's a killer. That actually has Gura Yashiki on drums, who was a drummer with David Bowie and Prefab Sprout, I think, and a couple of other bands. So that's, and In the Dead of Night, I think, is like super goth, and also very political. But it's got that huge reverby sound. It reminds me of like things like Immigrant Song or whatever from Led Zeppelin. It's got that big sort of 70s, 80s kind of hugeness about it, that huge lexicon reverb.
Yeah.
And The Great Sea, I think, is like that classic goth, love song, really. It's that sort of yearning. I tried to build something. I was trying to create something that really epitomized that sense of yearning for something that you can't have. So anyway, there you go. So
I mean, you spoiled me for choice.
If you want to have a song that really emphasizes the Cassandra Complex, really, is Speed of Sound, because that song is actually about the Cassandra Complex. that song's about our own history.
All right, I'm going to trust you on this one, but everyone should go in and listen to the whole album because it's a great album from front to back. And of course, start out with Hotline to Elvis. But we are going to spin out to Speed of Sound. This has been, as always, a genuine pleasure talking with Rodney Orpheus of the Cassandra Complex. I look forward to talking to you more soon. Check out his Twitch stream. Check out the album. And from all of us here at Sounds and Shadows, keep it dark, yo.
6 a.m. and I'm alone again, in a bed in a northern town. The sun's coming up and I'm feeling rough, and I'm coming down. It's always morning somewhere, the sun will always rise. When the sun goes down, will I turn around and wake up beside you? I'm wired for the speed of sound. I die if I stay on the ground. I live in undiscovered lands and shifting sands of you. Fragile right from the start. One mistake and we fell apart. Nothing to say, nowhere to go. So on with the show. Do I do what I always do? Or try to create something new? Be the man of experience, or the boy that never grew. I'm wired for the speed of sound. I die if I stay on the ground. I live in undiscovered lands and shifting sands of you. And I'm alone again, in a bed in a northern town. The sun's coming up and I'm feeling rough, and I'm coming down. I'm wired for the speed of sound. I die if I stay.